In Wales, where she says her mind settled on an early election, Theresa May visited a factory in Newport. Yesterday's polls in Wales pointed to an historic realignment of politics here, bastions of Labour falling into Tory hands. Her mission is now to dampen expectations of a landslide, to make sure her vote turns out.
The vote for any other party would be a vote for a weak and failing Jeremy Corbyn, propped up by a coalition of chaos.
A slogan revived from the last general election. Campaign advisor Sir Linton Crosby has told Tories he'd like to have had more time to devise and road test slogans, but they seem pretty settled on this one.
Vote for strong and stable leadership in the national interest. That strong and stable leadership. From a strong and stable government and strong and stable leadership.
A taster of the relentless repetition of slogans Theresa May intends to bombard you with for the next 44 days. Back in Westminster, Labour was speaking in longer sentences. Ahead of the party's manifesto, Labour's shadow Brexit secretary, Sir Keir Starmer, was trying to respond to critics who say Labour doesn't have a clear policy on Brexit.
On day one of a Labour government, we will immediately guarantee that all EU nationals currently living in the UK will see no change in their legal status as a result of Brexit. Day one, big commitment.
He also said the UK might not leave the EU customs union under a Labour government. And he said free movement of people from the EU would end, but EU citizens with job offers should be able to come to the UK.
They provided confusion and incoherence, frankly. Keir Starmer's the man who a year ago, or almost a year ago, resigned from the shadow cabinet. Why? Because Jeremy Corbyn could not provide the strong leadership necessary to negotiate Brexit, the most important negotiation of modern times.
A cross-party campaign announced it wanted Remain voters to vote tactically in seats like Chingford in Essex, in the hope of toppling prominent pro-Brexit MPs, like the sitting MP here, former Tory leader Ian Duncan-Smith. That led prominent Tories, including former Education Secretary Nicky Morgan, who had been in the campaign, to walk out. And it got a mixed reception amongst voters in Mr Duncan-Smith's seat.
I'm voting Brexit. And I voted for Remain, but now I'm pleased we're coming out.
So, in the general election, which way are you going to vote?
I'm going to vote for Conservatives. I think she's doing a good... There's no one else to vote for. I think she's doing a good job.
We need someone who's prepared to stand up for us, and I think she will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. We all feel the same, yeah.
In the referendum, I voted to Remain. Yeah, so did I. And I think I would probably vote to... tactically to get somebody who sort of is more pro-Remain, just so that things can swing a bit more that way.
The Open Britain campaign group is also trying to rally support for prominent pro-Remain MPs in 20 seats. Only one of those is a Tory.
Well, a little earlier I spoke to Sir Keir Starmer. I asked him about the party's position. Keir Starmer, let's be clear, if the country votes for Labour, is there any chance whatsoever of us remaining in Europe?
No, we accept the results of the referendum, and what I've set out today is what the changed relationship with the EU should be. And so Labour say we should have an ongoing relationship. It should be based on cooperation, collaboration. We need to get from where we are to where we need to be. It's changing really from membership to partnership, because I think everybody accepts we want to trade with Europe.
Now, what if there's no deal? We still leave?
Well, the position I've set out is that the Labour Party would try to bring Parliament with it on the journey and make sure that we don't have no deal. No deal is the worst of all possible outcomes, crashing out in March 2019. And from a Labour point of view, we've been clear that should not be considered a viable option.
Well, but if there was no deal and we were confronted with that, presumably the possibility of simply staying would have to play.
We would argue for transitional measures, for time to negotiate further. I think coming out without a deal at all is not just the trade arrangements that will be put in jeopardy, it is all the other arrangements that we put in jeopardy. So it is the worst of all options. And one of my great concerns about the Prime Minister's approach is that having put, as she has, immigration as the sort of key priority and the economy and jobs second, and we say they should be the other way round, she's led herself to a position where she's ruled out any relationship with the single market, she's ruled out any relationship with the customs union, she's ruled out any jurisdiction of the European Court, even when it would help businesses. and she wants to remove us from key agencies. She's effectively removed all the options from the table. And having done that, she's now saying that no deal is better than a bad deal, which just doesn't make any sense.
But you've ruled out any freedom of movement. And in doing so, do you have the agreement of your shadow Prime Minister and your shadow Home Secretary?
Yes, we've ruled out freedom of movement as it currently is, because that's an EU rule.
That is, they have too.
Yes, the Labour Party position. Yes, the Labour Party position is that freedom of movement will have to go. We will have immigration rules and regional management of migration, and that should work for the economy and for communities. In other words, we don't want businesses to be put in a position where they can't run their businesses, get the skills they need. Of course we don't. On the other hand, we have to take into account what communities are saying about their concerns about immigration. So it's not changing from freedom of movement to no movement. It's changing from freedom of movement to managed movement.
Restricted movement, we could say.
Well, managed movement, yes, where it's more based on the notion that if you're coming here to work, that's one thing, or you're coming here for family reasons. And I think that we should also take students out of the net migration figures altogether, and refugees should never have been in them in the first place. So when we break it down in that way, it's management of those that are coming here essentially to work.
So you are saying to young people, we are not going to enable you to live, love and work in 27 other countries without any problem?
Well, I passionately campaigned for us to stay in the EU because I valued it.
What you're saying tonight is it's over. If young people are looking in and thinking, shall I vote Labour in order to get all those rights back?
Well,
no.
What we say is, look, this was bound up with the referendum outcome, and freedom of movement has to change as a result, and that is to face the result of the referendum, to accept it, and to move on to a different position. I don't think it means that people can't move across Europe. Of course it doesn't. It doesn't mean that youngsters can't go and work in other countries or have family members in other countries. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means it's a managed system. It's not freedom of movement.
Keir Starmer, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Well, I'm joined now by the Conservative MP, Kwasi Kwarteng. Let's start with what Sir Keir Starmer's been saying all day, which is that it's rigid and reckless, in his view, for you to be shutting the door on the single market. I mean, you've got to admit that Theresa May is taking a risk. She's making a gamble.
I think we've rehearsed a lot of these arguments before, and I'm struck by the fact that Keir Starmer has moved very much to our position. You saw him in the clip say that he wanted to end freedom of movement. This was a position which his party leader, Jeremy Corbyn, was not happy with. This is also a position which Diane Abbott, the Shadow Home Secretary, was not happy with.
But on the single market, there's a clear difference between Labour and yourselves. They don't want to shut out access to the single market.
Well, we haven't really started the negotiation, but what is key and what I think was interesting in what he said was that he was saying that freedom of movement, as we know it, has to end. And that's always been our position. And our position, the government's position, has always been that if membership of the single market meant that we could not restrict, we could not end freedom of movement, we would have to leave the single market. And it looks like Labour today have clarified what was a very muddy position and have actually come to accept the fact that freedom of movement must end.
Well, will you clarify whether you believe that Theresa May is taking a gamble? There is a risk involved in this negotiation, isn't there?
I think it would be premature to say what the negotiation will come up with.
But there is a risk.
But there's no doubt that Theresa May is a strong, stable leader. She enjoys huge confidence.
And enjoys a gamble.
Amongst wide sections of the people. And as someone said in the clip, she's really the only choice for where we are now.
So you're saying this is a risk-free? I mean, I'm just trying to push you on this issue of the risk.
Nothing in life, very little is risk-free. But I think we're in very capable hands. I think we will have strong, stable leadership. I think, as one of your people in the clip said, she will fight for Britain, and she will have the country's best interests, and she will do that tenaciously and with a great deal of ability.
Well, if she's fighting for Britain and she's standing up for people, as she said on the steps of Downing Street that she wanted to fight burning injustice, why is it then that living standards are falling now? And this is partly because of the plummeting pound after Brexit.
Well, the pound has come up a bit. I'm not a currency speculator, but currency movements go up and down. But
well, I can tell you it's down 14% against the dollar.
The main point we have to realise in terms of this economic debate was that people on your programme were suggesting that there would be a recession in 2016. That didn't happen. Thankfully, it didn't happen. The economy is growing at 2%.
But living standards are falling because inflation is going up.
Forgive me, it's the fastest growing economy in the G7.
And inflation is at its highest for 3 years.
And we also learned today that the deficit is lower than it's been at any point since 2008. So generally, the economic situation is quite healthy.
You've never had it so good?
I'm not suggesting that. I mean, that would be a complacent thing to say, but I think things are going much better than many people anticipate.
Well, you try telling that. You're saying things are going much better. You try telling that to people who think, well, wages are falling in real terms. Do you accept that that's because of this Brexit gamble you're taking?
No. What I am accepting is the fact that many of the predictions that people said about how the economy would go into recession have been proved false. That hasn't happened. Now, you're quite right to say that the pound has depreciated. It's actually increasing in value now. I think people feel that they want to have stability. They want this election to be over and done with. They want to have a strong Conservative government with a leader who is trusted and respected throughout the world. And I think that's a very important thing when we try and reach economic stability.
Well, talking of economic stability, final question. Do you agree with the Chancellor that because of the economic uncertainties ahead, which you accept, that he needs the scope to be able to raise taxes if he needs to?
I think that the Chancellor wants to have as wide a possible action in what are uncertain times. We know that there are uncertain times because we've got this negotiation, the global situation, you've got North Korea, you've got lots of things going on.
So no repetition of David Cameron's promise on tax.
And the Chancellor needs to have much more wiggle room than sometimes manifestos give them.
Kwasi Kwarteng, thank you very much.
Well, our political editor, Gary Gibbon, joins us now live from Westminster. Gary, a clarifying day.
Yes, Tim Farron, the Lib Dem leader, has been, virtually every time he's been in front of a camera since this election was called, he's been asked whether he believes gay sex is a sin. He's swerved the question every time. I think yesterday when he was at a photo opportunity in South London as part of his campaign, his supporters started jeering reporters as they asked the question repeatedly. I think there was a feeling at the top of the Lib Dems that this was getting out of hand. Some sort of line had to be drawn under this matter. And he has now given an interview this evening in which he says he does not think that gay sex is a sin, and this is how he put it.
My view is, I'm careful about how I speak about my faith. I'm somebody who makes no secret of it, but does not bang on about it either. I don't think people want political party leaders telling them what is and isn't sin.
Well, we're being asked to believe that this is not some sort of epiphany for Mr. Farron. It's not that he's changed his view, he just thought that he would share it. The reason he wasn't sharing his view before, we are told, is because he didn't want to be drawn into theological arguments. He's an evangelical Christian, very open about his faith, and you have to assume that this is because the Lib Dems didn't either didn't feel that this was his view, or they didn't want him being drawn into other sorts of social issue questions, like, say, time limits on abortion and things like that. Mr. Farron has long been known to be not entirely swimming in the mainstream of prominent Lib Dems when it comes to issues like that. So it may have drawn a line under it, or it may have opened other questions. One other little tidbit from tonight, two Jeremys have met. Jeremy Corbyn has met the Cabinet Secretary Sir Jeremy Hayward to discuss what Labour would do as an incoming government. This is part of the regular procedures now at the time of an election, and the idea now is that civil servants will start meeting other shadow ministers, draw up plans, great big files would sit on the desk waiting to be implemented if Jeremy Corbyn comes to power.
Well, back on the campaign trail, Theresa May has been quick to exploit a new poll suggesting that the Conservative Party is on target for a first election win in Wales in 167 years. The Prime Minister went to the traditional Labour heartland of South Wales to urge voters to join the Tory bandwagon. Our correspondent Andy Davies joins us from Bridgend tonight. Andy, what have you found there?
Well, there's certainly a spring in the step of the Welsh Tories right now. They cheered Theresa May into this community centre behind me and then grabbed selfies with her afterwards, capturing what they think could be moments along the path to a historic victory for the Welsh Conservatives here in Wales. At least that's what that poll you mentioned seemed to suggest yesterday. As for Labour, well, they've been the dominant party in Wales for so long, and they're certainly not going to surrender that status without an almighty fight.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give the warmest of welcomes, the loudest of cheers for the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Little wonder it was all smiles in Bridgend today as the Prime Minister addressed local supporters, because if a poll yesterday is anything to go by, then this Tory leader could be headed for a sensational victory in Wales.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for that wonderful welcome. And it's great to be here in Wales. It's great to be here in Bridgend with 44 days to go to the most important election this country has faced in my lifetime.
The message was simple. Don't be complacent. Every vote counts. Framed in a narrative of Tories versus what she dismissed as weak, unstable opposition.
Give me a mandate to lead Britain. Give me a mandate to speak for Britain. Give me a mandate to fight for Britain. And give me a mandate to deliver for Britain.
Theresa May has made a big play today in Wales of trying to designate her opponents here as disruptors in the Brexit process, portraying them as intent upon frustrating her hand in EU negotiations. And no surprises there, of course. Wales, after all, did vote leave. Labour dismissed her visit today as a stunt, but with yesterday's polls suggesting unprecedented Tory gains in Wales in the general election, there's been much talk of Tory tanks on Labour's lawn. And in Cardiff this morning, seat of a Labour Welsh government, there was certainly a hint of defensive action in the air. The challenges facing Labour in Wales right now are significant, aren't they?
Labour face a perfect storm in Wales at the moment. Firstly, there's the wider Corbyn issue. Is he fit to lead the UK? Secondly, there's Brexit. Labour opposed Brexit in Wales, but the people of Wales, they backed it. And finally, there's the issue of public services. Now, Labour have been in government in Cardiff Bay for almost 20 years, so it's really difficult for them to say to voters, if you want to see your public services improved, back Labour.
Labour today said they were very happy to stand on their record on public services in Wales. But in Bridgend, held by Labour for the last 30 years, those intending to support the party this June appeared somewhat thin on the ground. Yeah. Who are you going to vote for?
I'm not sure yet.
Who did you vote for last time?
Labour.
And you're not? Why aren't you sure this time?
Him, isn't it? Mr. Corbyn.
What's wrong with Mr. Corbyn?
I don't think he's a statesman, is he? And we need a statesman to be Prime Minister.
Are you going to vote in the general election?
Yeah.
We're Channel 4 News. We're just asking, who are you going to vote for?
Huh? Not Labour.
Why not?
Okay.
Yeah, definitely not Labour. I agree with you.
I normally vote independent, but this time I think I'll vote Conservative.
And why is that?
Because I think I agree with Brexit.
They weren't all like that.
Always voted Labour. Always.
You'll vote again?
Think so.
And for what reason are you going to vote Labour this time round?
Because it's better than the Tories. Anything is better than the Tories.
But Labour must be wary of those suggestions that there are many in Wales who once left Labour for UKIP and instead of now returning are choosing the Conservatives instead, like this voter. So let's just get this right. You were a Labour voter,
I was
you
a
went
Labour
to
voter,
UKIP,
I went to UKIP,
and now you've gone to the Tories.
Conservative.
And what is it?
Because of Theresa May. I like some of the things that she said she's going to do.
Labour's Carwyn Jones, the First Minister of Wales and Assembly member for Bridgend, has conceded the party faces a real challenge. But he wants voters here to look at the bigger picture.
What we're saying to people is, look, as far as the Tories are concerned, what have the Tories ever done for Wales? Absolutely nothing. They've only destroyed the economy, destroyed jobs, and given a chance they do it again. The Tories will walk all over Wales, given half a chance, and at the end of the day, we need Labour MPs in Wales who stand up for Wales, and not a parliament made up of MPs who are little more than sheep with blue rosettes.
As Plaid Cymru launched their manifesto today, their leader, Leanne Wood, warned of dark clouds lurking of Tory rule. Plaid offered a ray of hope, she said. But like Labour, UKIP and the Lib Dems in Wales, they too will be hoping that yesterday's polls suggesting a resounding Theresa May victory in Wales isn't borne out on June the 8th.